My family ignored me for years until they found out I own a successful business. I stopped waiting to be noticed a long time ago. There was a time back when I was young and naive, when I still believed I could earn my family's love. I thought if I did everything right, if I got good grades, stayed out of trouble, helped around the house, they would look at me the way they looked at my siblings, like I mattered. But no matter how hard I tried, I was always background noise. My parents had 3 children, but only 2 existed in their world. My older sister Lisa was their golden child, beautiful, charming, effortlessly adored. She never had to fight for their attention. They handed it to her on a silver platter. My younger brother, Dylan, was the baby, the one they coddled, the one they always made excuses for. If he got in trouble at school, it was because the teacher was unfair. If he broke something, it wasn't his fault. If he failed at something, it was never on him. And then there was me, the middle child, the afterthought, the one they only remembered when something needed to be done. Go help your sister with her homework. Dylan needs a ride. Take him. Why don't you do something useful and clean up? I could have been screaming, and they still wouldn't have heard me. They never asked about my day, never noticed when I was struggling, never cared enough to see me. Birthdays were just another day. Achievements were met with empty nods. While Lisa got a car for her 16th birthday and Dylan was showered with gifts just because, I got hand-me-downs and half-hearted congratulations, as if acknowledging me at all was a chore. For years I told myself it didn't matter, that I would find a way to make them see me. But by the time I turned 18, I finally understood. I wasn't meant to be seen. So, I stopped trying. I moved out as soon as I could, scraping by on part-time jobs while juggling college classes. No one offered to help. No one asked how I was managing. I could have been starving, homeless, dying, and they wouldn't have noticed. Or maybe they just didn't care. But I made it through, alone. And eventually, after years of struggle, sacrifice, and relentless work, I built something real. My business didn't start as much. Just an idea, a desperate attempt to carve out a future for myself. But what started small grew, and grew, and grew. While my family continued living their lives without a second thought about me, I was building an empire. Late nights, early mornings, sweat and exhaustion, I poured everything I had into it, and it paid off. I became something they never imagined I could be. Successful. By the time my company exploded into a household name, I had wealth beyond what I ever thought possible. I had a home that felt like mine, money in the bank, the kind of stability I once dreamed of when I was barely scraping by. But the best part? I had done it without them. For years, my phone was silent. No calls, no texts, no invitations to family gatherings, nothing but the occasional obligatory message during the holidays. Until the day they found out. And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. The first call came from my mother. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering, her name looking foreign on my phone after so many years of neglect. "Hello?" "Oh, sweetheart," she exclaimed, her voice drenched in a warmth that felt manufactured. "It's been so long. How have you been?" I almost laughed. So long, how have I been? I had spent years living in the background of her life, and now she was acting as if we had always been close. "I've been fine," I said flatly. She hummed as if my answer satisfied some imaginary narrative she had created. "We heard the wonderful news. Your business. Oh, honey, we are so proud of you." We, as if they had been there. As if they had supported me, cheered me on, lifted me up. I knew what this was. And I knew what was coming next. "Your father and I were just talking about how we need to get together soon," she continued, her voice dripping with forced affection. "It's been far too long. We miss you so much." The audacity almost stunned me into silence. For years, I had been nothing but a shadow to them, a name they barely remembered. And now that I had something they wanted, now that I was worth something in their eyes, they suddenly missed me? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "You miss me?" "Of course, darling. Your family." That word. They had never used it when I was struggling, when I was alone, when I was clawing my way out of nothing with no one to lean on. But now, when I was successful, when I was wealthy, when I had power, suddenly, I was family. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to remain neutral. What do you really want? There was a pause. A split second of hesitation before she let out a fake laugh. Oh, sweetheart, what do you mean? We just cut the crap, Mom. The mask cracked. Well, she said, shifting her tone to something more serious. Things have been hard lately. Your father's job. Well, you know how the economy is. And your sister, bless her heart, she's been struggling too. And Dylan, well, he's been going through a rough patch. I could already see where this was going. And? I prompted. She sighed dramatically. We were thinking, since you've been so successful, maybe you could help out a little? Nothing much, just a little support for your family in these trying times. And there it was. The real reason for the call. Not love, not pride, not regret for the years of neglect, just greed. I let the silence stretch long enough for her to start shifting uncomfortably. Then, with a slow exhale, I spoke. I needed help once, I said. I needed family once. And where were you? She sputtered. That's not fair. You know we... No. I cut her off, my voice sharper than before. You chose to ignore me. You chose to treat me like I didn't exist. And now, after all these years, when I finally have something you want, now you remember me? Honey, please. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No. Silence. She sucked in a breath, as if the very thought of being denied shocked her. I could hear the desperation creeping in now. You can't just turn your back on us. We're your family. I laughed then, genuinely amused by the irony. You turned your back on me a long time ago, I said. I'm just returning the favor. And with that, I ended the call. I knew they'd try again. They'd call. They'd text. They'd find new ways to manipulate, to guilt trip, to weave their sob stories into something that sounded convincing. The silence after that phone call should have been satisfying. It should have been a victory, a confirmation that I had finally taken control of the narrative, my narrative. But instead, it felt like standing at the edge of a storm, watching the dark clouds gather, knowing the worst was still to come. Because if there was one thing I knew about my family, it was that they didn't take no for an answer. The first call was just the beginning. The next day, Lisa texted me. Lisa, hey, long time no talk, we need to catch up. I stared at the screen, unimpressed. She had never used emojis with me before. Hell, she had barely spoken to me before. I ignored it. A few hours later, another text came in. Lisa, Mom said she talked to you. We're all so proud of you. You've done amazing for yourself. Let's grab dinner soon, my treat. I knew better. Lisa didn't do generosity. If she was offering to pay, it was only because she expected a much bigger payout in return. I ignored that too. Then Dylan called. I didn't answer. A minute later, a voicemail popped up. I hesitated before pressing play, his voice crackling through the speaker. Hey, it's Dylan. A pause. I know it's been a while, but man, I heard about your business, and that's insane. Like, wow, you really made it, huh? That's cool. Another pause. Listen, things have been kind of rough lately. Just thought maybe we could catch up? No pressure. Hit me up. I rolled my eyes. No pressure. Right. For years, Dylan barely acknowledged me unless he needed something. He was always the baby, the one everyone else rushed to help, the one given chance after chance after chance. And now that life had finally caught up with him, he was suddenly remembering he had a sibling. I deleted the voicemail without responding. But the real test came 2 days later when my mother and father showed up. I had barely gotten home from work when the doorbell rang. The moment I looked through the peephole and saw them standing there, I knew I should have just walked away, pretended I wasn't home, let them stand outside until they gave up and left. But I didn't. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the need for closure. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to see them squirm. So, I opened the door. My mother's face lit up with practiced warmth, the kind of expression she had used on guests and some other friends, the kind she had never once wasted on me before. Sweetheart. Oh, it's so good to see you. My father wasn't as theatrical. He just gave a tight nod, eyes scanning my house like he was already assigning value to the furniture. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. What do you want? My mother clutched her chest like I had stabbed her. "Oh, honey, is that any way to greet your parents?" I didn't budge. The fake smile wavered. She cleared her throat. We wanted to see you. To talk." I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm. Eventually, my father sighed, impatient as ever. "Your mother and I are going through a rough patch," he said bluntly. "Money's tight. We figured, now that you've got this successful business, you could help your family out." There it was. No hesitation. No attempt to sugarcoat it. Just raw entitlement, as if my success was theirs by default. I tilted my head. "Let me get this straight. You ignored me for years, treated me like I was invisible, never called, never cared. But now that I have money, suddenly I'm family again." My mother's face crumpled. "It's not like that, honey. It's exactly like that," I cut in, my voice sharp. "Where was this love when I was struggling? When I was barely making rent? When I was working 2 jobs just to survive? Where were you then?" They had no answer. I nodded, stepping back. "That's what I thought. Now, if you'll excuse me." I moved to shut the door, but my father caught it with one large hand, pushing back just enough to keep it open. His expression darkened, his jaw tightening. "We're not asking for much," he said, his voice low, edged with something dangerously close to anger. "Just a little help. That's what family does." I let out a cold laugh. "No, see, family supports each other. Family cares even when there's nothing to gain." I leaned in slightly, meeting his glare head on. "You didn't give a damn about me when I was nothing. So now you get nothing from me." My mother grabbed his arm, her voice turning desperate. "Please, just hear us out. We lost the house." I froze. That was new. She sniffled, wiping at imaginary tears. "Your father's job fell through. Lisa's struggling. Dylan's not in a good place. We have nowhere to go." I really looked at them, the way my father's shoulders sagged, the way my mother's hands trembled slightly. They weren't lying. They really had lost everything, and for a split second, I felt something almost like pity. But then I remembered every birthday they forgot, every time they made me feel small, every night I spent alone, wondering why I wasn't good enough to be seen. I exhaled slowly. "That's rough," I said, my voice neutral. "But it's not my problem." My mother choked on a breath. "How can you say that?" "Easily." My father's patience snapped. "You ungrateful little—" I slammed the door in their faces. The banging started immediately. "You'll regret this," my father roared. "We're your family." "Please," my mother sobbed, "don't do this." I stood there staring at the door, listening to their desperation. Once upon a time I would have given anything to hear them fighting for me. Now, it was just noise. Eventually, the pounding stopped. I waited until I heard the sound of their car pulling away before I let out a breath. My hands were shaking, adrenaline still buzzing through my veins, but I didn't regret it. Not one bit. They had ignored me when I needed them. Now, it was my turn. The next few days they tried again. More calls, more texts, more sob stories about how they had nowhere to go, how Lisa's life was falling apart, how Dylan had gotten himself into trouble. I didn't respond. Eventually, the messages turned angry. "Mom, how can you be so cruel?" "Dad, ungrateful brat, you'll regret this." Lisa, "Wow, so money really changed you, huh?" Dylan, "You think you're better than us?" I blocked them all, and I felt free. They had never been my family. Not really, because family is more than blood. Family is love, respect, support. After I blocked their numbers, it was like my family had ceased to exist, and honestly, it was freeing. I didn't feel like I was waiting for something, waiting for approval, waiting to be seen, waiting for an apology that would never come. I had spent years being the forgotten one, the background character in my own story. But now, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was in control, and they hated that. The peace didn't last forever. I should have known it wouldn't. A few months after I cut them off, I came home late from a business meeting. The second I pulled into my driveway, my stomach twisted. There was a car parked out front. Not just any car, my parents' car. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, willing myself to stay calm. I had made my decision. I had walked away. And yet, there they were, like a bad dream that refused to end. Slowly I got out of my car. My mother was standing by the front door, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold, like she was trying to play the victim. My father leaned against the car, arms crossed, his face lined with frustration. Lisa was there too, dressed in expensive clothes that didn't match the sob story they had been trying to sell me. Only Dylan was missing. Good. I didn't have the patience to deal with his fake apologies today. I took a deep breath and walked up the driveway, stopping just short of them. "Why are you here?" My mother took a shaky breath. We needed to see you." I stared at her. "I blocked all of you for a reason." She flinched. "I know, sweetheart, I know. But we're family. And family—" I held up a hand. "Stop." She closed her mouth immediately, eyes wide like she was afraid I'd shut the door in her face before she could finish. I glanced at my father. He hadn't said a word yet. He just stood there, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. He looked uncomfortable. Good. Lisa, on the other hand, scoffed. "God, you're so dramatic." I turned my attention to her. "Dramatic?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You're acting like we were evil or something." "Yeah, okay, maybe we weren't that close, but so what? You made it, didn't you? You're rich now. So why are you still so bitter?" I laughed. Actually laughed. It was so Lisa to act like years of neglect and dismissal were just minor inconveniences. "You really don't get it, do you?" I said, shaking my head. "It's not about the money. It's about how you all treated me like I was nothing until I had something you wanted." Lisa folded her arms. "So what? You're just going to cut us off forever?" I stared at her. "Yes." Her mouth fell open slightly. She looked at my parents like she expected them to jump in, to defend her, to fix the situation. But they said nothing, because they knew. They had no more cards to play. "Please," my mother tried again. Her voice cracked, but I didn't trust it. "We lost everything. The house, the savings, Dylan's—" She swallowed. "Dylan's in a bad place, and we just— no." It was my father who reacted this time. His head snapped up, his eyes flashing with the same anger I remembered from childhood, the kind that used to make me shrink, make me back down. But not anymore. "What do you mean, no?" he demanded. "I mean no," I said simply. "I don't owe you anything," he scoffed. "Ungrateful little—" I took a step forward, and he actually backed up. "I'm ungrateful?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Tell me, Dad, what exactly am I supposed to be grateful for? The years of being ignored? The birthdays you forgot? The times I begged to be included, only to be shoved aside like I was nothing?" He said nothing. I let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of years of pain rise to the surface, but this time it didn't feel suffocating. It felt freeing. "I spent my whole life being nothing to you," I said, looking at each of them in turn. "And now, that's exactly what you are to me." My mother let out a choked sob. Lisa glared at me like I had personally ruined her life. My father clenched his fists, jaw tightening like he wanted to say something cruel, something final. But he didn't, because he knew it wouldn't work. Not anymore. I stepped back, opening my front door. "You need to leave," Lisa scoffed. "You're an asshole," I smiled. "And you're a leech." She gasped, but I didn't wait for a response. I walked inside and shut the door in their faces. They didn't knock. They didn't shout. They just stood there for a moment. I watched through the peephole as my mother wiped at her eyes, as my father muttered something to Lisa, as they finally turned and walked back to the car. And just like that, they were gone. For good. They tried to reach out a few more times. Lisa sent an email. My mother left another voicemail, her voice full of regret and desperation. Dylan even messaged me once, but I didn't bother opening it. Eventually the messages stopped. The silence stretched longer and longer, until it was no longer suffocating. It was peaceful. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that they had moved into a small apartment, that Lisa was still struggling, that Dylan had spiraled, that my father was bitter, that my mother still told everyone who would listen that she had tried to fix things. I didn't care. I was free. No more chasing love that wasn't there. No more waiting to be seen. I had built a life for myself. A real one. And as I stood in my home, I realized something. I wasn't just the forgotten one anymore. I was the one who had walked away, and I would never look back. My family laughed at me for being broke. Now they want my help. After I became a millionaire, I never used to get calls from my family. Back when I was scraping by, working 3 jobs just to afford rent on a cramped, run-down apartment, my phone stayed silent. No one checked in. No one cared. If I ever dared to reach out first, I was met with impatience, condescension, or, worst of all, mockery. Still chasing that ridiculous dream? You should get a real job instead of wasting your time. Why don't you just accept that not everyone's meant to be successful? Their words were knives, each one slicing away at what little dignity I had left. But I never let them see me bleed. I swallowed the pain, bit my tongue, and kept moving forward. I told myself it didn't matter, that their opinions were irrelevant, that one day I'd prove them all wrong. And then, one day, I did. The moment everything changed wasn't flashy. It wasn't some dramatic overnight miracle. It was the result of years of grinding, failing, learning, and trying again. My breakthrough came in the form of an investment, one that everyone had called a waste of time. A small tech startup, overlooked by most, undervalued, and dismissed. But I saw potential where others didn't, so I bet on it. And that bet paid off in ways I never could have imagined. One acquisition later, I went from barely making rent to a bank account that made even me dizzy. One moment, I was nobody. The next, I was a millionaire, a self-made one. And suddenly, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. At first I ignored the calls, let them go to voicemail. I knew what was coming. The fake concern, the forced excitement, the carefully rehearsed speeches about how proud they were of me, despite never once lifting a finger to help when I needed it most. But the messages kept piling up. "Hey, it's Mom. Haven't heard from you in a while. We should catch up. Your brother told me the big news. Wow, you've really come a long way. We always knew you had it in you. It's Uncle Ray. Just wanted to say congrats, man. We should get together soon." Lies. Every last one of them. These were the same people who had laughed in my face when I told them I was going to make something of myself. The same people who had rolled their eyes when I struggled to afford a simple meal. The same ones who had enjoyed watching me fail. And now they needed me. I let the messages pile up for weeks. I wanted them to feel the same silence I had endured for years. I wanted them to know what it felt like to be ignored, dismissed, forgotten. But then, finally, curiosity got the best of me. So, one evening, I picked up the phone. "Sweetheart," Mom's voice was dripping with warmth, so sickly sweet it made my stomach turn. "It's so good to hear your voice." I leaned back in my leather chair watching the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse. "Is it?" A pause, a flicker of hesitation. Then she laughed, light and airy. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be? You've been so busy, we hardly hear from you anymore." I smirked. "Interesting, because when I was broke, I never heard from you." Another pause, this one longer. "I don't know what you mean," she said finally, her voice losing a bit of its forced cheer. "You don't?" I asked, tilting my head. "Because I remember calling you once, years ago. I was struggling to pay rent, and I asked if I could crash on your couch for a few weeks. You told me I needed to grow up and stop being so irresponsible. Does that ring a bell?" Silence. I could feel her discomfort through the phone. "Honey," she started, but I cut her off. "And now here you are calling me out of the blue. Tell me, Mom, what do you want?" Her voice wavered. "I don't want anything, I just—" "Cut the crap," I said, my tone sharp enough to slice through her performance. "You didn't care about me when I had nothing. Why should I believe you care now?" She exhaled sharply, frustration creeping into her voice. "That's not fair." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Neither was the way you treated me." Another stretch of silence. Then, the truth finally slipped through. "Your brother's in trouble," she admitted, her voice quiet now, almost hesitant. He made some bad investments. Lost a lot of money. He needs help." There it was. Not congratulations. Not "we're proud of you." Not I'm sorry for the way we treated you. Just help your brother." I closed my eyes for a brief moment, feeling the full weight of it settle on my shoulders. Then I spoke, my voice calm, cold. "No," Mom sputtered. "What? But he's your brother. Family helps family." Funny, I mused, because when I needed help, family laughed in my face. "That's not true," she snapped, but there was no conviction behind it. "Isn't it?" I countered. "Tell me, Mom, where was this family loyalty when I was skipping meals to afford my dreams? Where was it when I was sleeping in my car? Where was it when you told me I was a failure?" She had no answer. I let the silence stretch, let her feel it. Then, finally, I ended the conversation. "Tell my brother I wish him the best," I said, voice devoid of emotion. "But I'm not his safety net. You all made it clear years ago that I was on my own. Now, so is he." And with that, I hung up. The calls kept coming. First from my brother, then from other relatives. They tried different tactics: guilt, anger, fake apologies. But I didn't bend. I wasn't their punching bag anymore. I wasn't the desperate dreamer they had mocked. I was a self-made millionaire. And I owed them nothing. For years they had laughed at me for struggling. For years they had dismissed my dreams. Now they wanted my money. And they would get the same thing they once gave me. Nothing. The calls didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. At first, it was just my mother and brother, desperate, insistent, trying every trick in the book to guilt me into helping. But when I didn't cave, the others started pouring in like vultures circling a fresh kill. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one had their own angle, their own carefully rehearsed excuse as to why they suddenly wanted to reconnect. "We should catch up. It's been too long. I've always believed in you, you know that, right?" Family sticks together. They thought I was stupid. They thought I didn't remember. But I did. I remembered every holiday where I sat alone, treated like an embarrassment. I remembered every dismissive glance, every sarcastic comment, every outright insult they threw my way when I was struggling. And now, here they were, scrambling to act like they had always been my biggest supporters. It was pathetic. The real breaking point came a week later. I had ignored most of their calls, but my brother, Eric, was more persistent than the rest. After the stunt my mother pulled, I expected him to come slinking into my inbox with some half-assed attempt at playing the concerned sibling. And I was right. "Bro, let's talk, please." I left him on read. A few hours later. "Look, I know things were rough between us, but I need you right now. Can we just talk?" I didn't respond. And then, 2 days later, the mask finally slipped. The texts started out passive-aggressive. "Must be nice to have all that money and still be so selfish. Wow, all that success really made you forget where you came from, huh? Guess you're too good for your own family now. Typical." I smirked when I read that one. Typical? The same family that never lifted a finger to help me now had the audacity to act entitled to what I had earned? The hypocrisy was almost laughable. But then, Eric sent something that made my blood run cold. "You should be careful who you screw over, bro. Money doesn't buy protection." I stared at my phone, my grip tightening. It wasn't just a guilt trip anymore. It was a threat. I should have been angry, furious, but all I felt was cold, calculating clarity. Eric had always been a bully, the golden child, the one everyone bent over backward to accommodate. When we were younger, he would mock me relentlessly, knowing I couldn't fight back because if I did, I would be the one blamed for starting trouble. He was the kind of person who believed the world owed him something simply for existing. And now, he thought I owed him too. He had made a mistake. A big one. Because I wasn't that weak, desperate kid anymore. I was someone with power now. And it was time he learned that the hard way. I spent the next few days in complete radio silence. I didn't respond to a single message, didn't acknowledge their increasingly frantic attempts to reach me. Then, I made a call of my own, not to my family, but to my lawyer. I had worked too hard to let my past sneak up and try to rob me blind. I needed to make sure my money, and more importantly, my peace, was untouchable. Evelyn Carter, the same woman who had helped me structure my business dealings, picked up on the first ring. "What's going on?" she asked, always straight to the point. I need to make sure my assets are locked down, I said, cutting straight to the chase. No loopholes. No possible claims from anyone outside of my inner circle. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. This is about your family, isn't it? They're circling like sharks, I admitted. And I need to make sure they can't sink their teeth into anything. Smart move, Evelyn said approvingly. I'll make sure everything is airtight. No one gets a dime unless you choose to give it to them. I exhaled, tension I hadn't even realized I was carrying loosening from my shoulders. Good. Anything else? She asked. I hesitated. Then my grip on the phone tightened. Yeah, I said, my voice low. I want you to dig into my brother's financials. Evelyn was quiet for a moment, then a knowing chuckle. Ah, I see. You want leverage. A slow smirk curled at my lips. Something like that. Consider it done. And just like that, the game shifted. They thought they were playing me. They had no idea what was coming. A week later, I made my move. After days of ignoring their calls, I finally sent a single message to the family group chat. Dinner at my place, tomorrow at 7. No excuses. The response was instant. Excitement. Fake enthusiasm. They thought they had won. They had no idea they were walking into a carefully laid trap. The next night, my penthouse was filled with familiar faces I hadn't seen in years. My mother, trying too hard to look casual. My aunts and uncles, pretending they were just so happy to see me. And of course Eric, smug, confident, acting like this was the moment I would finally hand him a blank check. I let them talk, let them eat, let them bask in the illusion that this was a reconciliation. Then, when the plates were cleared, I leaned back in my chair and steepled my fingers. So, I said casually, letting my gaze sweep across the room. I'm sure you're all wondering why I invited you here tonight. They chuckled nervously. Mom forced a warm smile. We just assumed you missed us, sweetheart. I smirked. Oh, I definitely missed something. I turned my attention to Eric, whose cocky grin was already slipping. Like how my dear brother has been running scams and dodging debt collectors for the last 3 years. The room went silent. Eric went pale. What the hell are you talking about? I pulled out a neatly printed document and slid it across the table. Public records, multiple unpaid loans, sketchy investment deals. Oh, and let's not forget the legal action pending against you for fraud. Mom gasped. That can't be true. It is, I said coolly. And you know what's really funny? The only reason Eric is here, groveling for money, is because he's desperate. He's drowning in debt and he thought I'd be stupid enough to save him. Eric shot up from his chair. You think you're better than me? He snarled. Just because you got lucky? I tilted my head. Was it luck when you all laughed at me? Was it luck when I worked 3 jobs just to survive while you lived off handouts? He had no response. I stood, adjusting my suit. You all came here thinking I was going to save you, that I'd be grateful enough for your fake love to throw money at your problems. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You were wrong. Mom reached for me. Please. I stepped back. You made your choice years ago. Now I'm making mine. I walked to the door and opened it. Leave. One by one, they left. Some in anger, some in shame. Eric was the last to go, his face twisted with hatred. You'll regret this, he spat. I met his gaze unbothered. No, I won't. And as the door slammed shut behind them, I knew I had finally won. The silence in my penthouse was deafening. Even after they were gone, their presence lingered like a bad stench, the echoes of their false laughter and empty words still hanging in the air. I stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, my fingers wrapped around the edge of a crystal glass filled with whiskey I hadn't even sipped yet. They thought they could play me. They thought they could manipulate me the way they always had, twisting the idea of family into a weapon, using guilt like a leash to pull me back into the role they had assigned me. The failure, the outcast, the one who would never make it. But they had underestimated me. For years, I had been the underdog, the one they dismissed, ignored, ridiculed. But now, the tables had turned, and they had no idea what was coming next. I wasn't finished with Eric, not by a long shot. I had given him a chance, a single opportunity to walk away quietly, to disappear and deal with his problems on his own. But I knew my brother. I knew his arrogance, his entitlement, his complete inability to take responsibility for his actions. He wouldn't let this go. And I was right. The very next day he started his smear campaign. At first it was subtle, a few posts on social media, cryptic messages designed to make me look like the villain. Funny how money changes people. Some folks forget where they came from. Success doesn't mean anything if you lose your soul in the process. Then, the messages started. Old acquaintances, distant relatives, even former coworkers, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly reaching out, all with the same fake concern. "Hey, I saw what Eric posted. Is everything okay? I just wanted to check in. I know family can be complicated, but maybe you should hear him out. You've always been such a good person. Don't let money change that." I smirked as I read the messages, shaking my head. He was predictable, pathetic even. But what he didn't realize was that while he was busy trying to turn people against me, I was already 3 steps ahead. I had something he didn't: leverage. I made a few calls. Quiet ones. Eric had burned bridges with a lot of people over the years, but there were still those who owed me favors. People who had seen what he was like behind closed doors, who had been scammed, manipulated, or screwed over by him in one way or another. And I made sure that every single one of them knew exactly what was coming. By the end of the week, Eric's financial situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. His creditors were closing in. Investors he had scammed were threatening legal action. His accounts were frozen, his assets under scrutiny, and he had nowhere left to turn. I was expecting the call when it came. My phone buzzed late at night, his name flashing across the screen. I let it ring. Let him sweat. Then finally, I answered. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. There was silence on the other end. Eric sounded small. "You did this," he muttered, barely above a whisper. I took a sip of my whiskey, my gaze fixed on the skyline. "No, you did this. I just made sure you couldn't run from it this time." A sharp breath. "You're my brother." I laughed, low and cold. "Now I'm your brother? Funny how that works." "Please," he said, and there was something in his voice I had never heard before. Desperation. It was almost satisfying. Almost. But I felt nothing. "Not my problem," I said flatly. And then I hung up. Of course, my mother wasn't going to let things end there. The next morning, she showed up at my office, unannounced. I was in the middle of reviewing a contract when my assistant buzzed in. "Sir, there's a woman here who says she's your mother. She's demanding to see you." I exhaled slowly, running a hand over my jaw. I could have turned her away. Could have let security escort her out like the intruder she was. But no, I wanted to hear what she had to say. "Send her in." A moment later, my office door swung open, and there she was. The woman who had abandoned me emotionally years ago, but now stood before me, pretending to be a mother again. She looked different, older, more fragile. But there was still that familiar sharpness in her eyes, the same calculating expression she had whenever she was about to say something manipulative. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands in front of me. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" She sighed, her lips pressing together. "Eric is in trouble." I arched a brow. "And?" Her eyes narrowed. "And you need to fix it." I laughed, shaking my head. "I don't need to do anything." She took a step closer. "You don't understand. He's drowning. They're coming after him. He's going to lose everything." I tilted my head. "So?" Her lips parted slightly, like she couldn't believe I had actually said that. "So?" she echoed. "He's your brother." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Let me make something very clear. The only time any of you have come to me in the past decade has been when you needed something. Not once have you ever reached out just to see how I was doing. Not once have you ever apologized for the way you treated me. All you've done is take." Her face twisted in frustration. "You're being petty." I chuckled. "No, I'm being fair," she scoffed, shaking her head. "You're not a good person. You know that? You think money makes you powerful, but you've just turned into a selfish, arrogant—" I stood abruptly, cutting her off. "You can insult me all you want," I said coolly, "but it won't change a thing. Eric made his bed. Now he has to lie in it." Her hands balled into fists. "You'll regret this." I smirked. Doubt it. I saw it, the realization settling in her eyes, the understanding that she had no power over me anymore. She had lost. They all had. She turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. And as I sat back down, exhaling slowly, I felt it. Something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The fallout was immediate. Eric's world crumbled around him. Without my help, he had no way out. The lawsuits came, the debts swallowed him whole, and his reputation was destroyed beyond repair. And my family? They scattered. They still tried, of course. They still sent messages hoping I'd soften, hoping I'd change my mind. But I never responded. I was done. Completely and utterly done. I was free from them. No more guilt. No more manipulation. No more pretending that family meant anything when it had been nothing but a burden. I had built my life without them, and now I would live it without them. And it felt damn good. The moment my mother stormed out of my office, I knew this was it. The last chapter. The final page. The moment I had been waiting for ever since they first turned their backs on me. And I felt nothing. No regret. No guilt. No lingering attachments. The people who had spent years tearing me down, laughing at my struggles, and pretending I didn't exist when I needed them most had finally been cut out of my life for good. I could breathe. But as much as I wanted to leave it all behind, I knew better. Some people don't go down quietly. Some people, when they realize they've lost, get desperate. And I had a feeling my family wasn't done trying to claw their way back into my life. So I decided to make sure they never even thought about coming back. The next day, I met with my lawyer, Evelyn Carter, for the final phase of my plan. I sat across from her, sipping my espresso, while she reviewed the documents I had asked her to prepare. "I have to admit," she said, adjusting her glasses as she flipped through the pages, "you're being thorough." I smirked. I like clean endings. She glanced up at me. "So you're really going through with this? Cutting off all ties?" "Every single one," I confirmed. "I don't want a single loophole. No claims, no contact. No way for them to twist anything around and try to sink their claws into me again." She nodded, setting down the papers. "Then here's what we're doing. First, we're making sure your assets are fully protected. No one, not your mother, not your brother, not any of those so-called relatives, will have any legal grounds to come after your money. Even if something happens to you, your estate is going exactly where you want it. No family inheritance, no handouts. Just the people you actually trust." I leaned back, satisfied. "Good. What else?" She tapped her fingers against the desk. "We're also issuing a formal no-contact order against Eric. Given his previous threats and his history of financial scams, we have enough grounds to ensure he can't harass you anymore. If he tries anything, restraining order." "Perfect. And finally," she continued, "I've drafted a cease and desist letter for your mother and anyone else who's been harassing you. It's a legal warning that makes it clear you want no further contact. If they keep pushing, we take it to court." I grinned. "I like you, Evelyn." She smirked. "That's why you pay me the big bucks." With one final signature, I sealed my family out of my life permanently. And it felt amazing. A week later, I got the final update on Eric. He was done. The lawsuits against him had gone through. His debts had caught up to him. The last of his investors had pulled out, and his name was now synonymous with fraud and failure. The golden child of the family, the one everyone had worshipped, the one they had chosen over me, was officially ruined. He had lost everything. And not only that, but people were talking. Turns out, my mother had been so focused on trying to guilt-trip me into saving Eric that she hadn't realized how much damage he had actually done. Once the full extent of his crimes was exposed, the very family that had once stood by his side started turning their backs on him. It was poetic justice. I didn't reach out to him, didn't call, didn't gloat. I just sat back and let karma do what it does best. And when I heard the rumors that he had fled town, tail between his legs, trying to start over somewhere else, I smiled. Let him run. Let him hide. It wasn't my problem anymore. I thought it was over. I thought she had finally given up. But then, one last desperate attempt. A handwritten letter, delivered to my office. I stared at the envelope for a long time, debating whether I should even open it. But in the end, curiosity won. I unfolded the letter, my mother's familiar cursive staring back at me. "I know you hate me." A dramatic start. Typical. I know I wasn't the best mother, I know I made mistakes, but I was only trying to do what was best for the family. I scoffed. The family. Right. Eric is gone. I don't know where he is. No one does. And I don't have anyone left. A pause. A slow inhale. "I don't want your money. I just want my son back." Something flickered in my chest. Not guilt, not sadness, just finality. I set the letter down, staring at it for a long moment. Then, without a second thought, I reached for the lighter on my desk. I struck the flame, watched it flicker, and then touched it to the paper. The flames caught quickly, devouring the words, curling the edges into blackened ash. I watched until there was nothing left. And then, I let it go. It's been a year since I last spoke to my family. A year without their toxicity, without their fake love, without their endless demands. And in that year, I have found peace. I wake up in the morning without dreading a phone call. I go to work without the weight of their judgment. I spend my money on things I care about, on investments, on charity, on the people who actually stood by me when I had nothing. I built my life without them, and now I'm living it without them. No regrets, no second thoughts, just freedom. And that is the best revenge of all.